So I don't have to tell anybody what Alzheimer's is like or what it does to people. I would bet that almost everyone in this room is now having or have had somebody close to them, someone they knew well, someone they loved, go through it. Now, my dad was an extremely self-governing person. And some people get what I'm saying. It's very difficult to be a child of someone like that who doesn't really follow the rules. This man finally stopped playing competitive rugby in New Zealand at 65. He was a state senator, and he was first elected in 1968. And just prior to that, the governor or somebody in the state of Kansas decided there shouldn't be dogs in the state capitol. Well, the first day he reported for duty as the state senator from his district, there was our dog with him, Yuli. He would show up at the door of our grade school and yank us out. And before we knew it, we were in either Butte, Montana, or Mobile, Alabama, or Saskatchewan, whatever that was. Hope there's not anybody here from Saskatchewan. In 2000, my dad was 70, and he got his Alzheimer's diagnosis that year. And I was the first family member that my mom and dad came to tell our family that he was going to die of this disease. And he died 13 years later. And what happened to him during those 13 years sometimes was good. Most of the time it was weird. And ultimately, it was terrible. The last day I saw my dad was, well, we were sitting silently together at his home in Lawrence, Kansas. He was 12 years into his disease, 13 years into his disease here. It was at the end. We sat silently together because he couldn't speak. He couldn't meet my eye. It's not that he wouldn't, he couldn't. He didn't know I was there. He couldn't understand the simplest words. He showed no signs of recognition of anyone, nor that he cared. He no longer possessed any empathy, and his sharp intellect was long gone. There was no shred of his really goofy and sometimes offensive humor, his always irritating logic, and there was no shred of his complete obsession with the Kansas Jayhawks. Hawks in the room? No? Oh, excellent. Rock chalk. We'll talk later. So he exhibited no self-awareness whatsoever, no signs of love or caring. And after watching dementia steal his humanity and his individuality and his personhood, my dad had finally fully disappeared from me. His frail, failing body was sitting next to me, but there was not a shred of light in him. And sitting there, in what turned out to be the last time I saw him, I just got really, really angry. Had my dad been able to see himself on that day, I'm quite certain he would have been even angrier than I was. It was this experience with my dad on the last day that I saw him that brought into focus the necessity of coming to terms with my own end-of-life experience. I was a completely healthy person at that time. But I knew that I couldn't let the same thing happen to me. It just wasn't going to happen. Now, in 2011, I moved from Kansas City to Portland. I could have moved anywhere in the country at that stage of my life, and I had a list of cities, and Portland came out on top. One of the reasons was because Portland had done this Death with Dignity thing. And I heard about it, the first in the nation to do it, and I was really fascinated by the courage and the tenacity that it took for Oregonians to do this. Now, a lot of my friends and family thought that was kind of an odd characteristic to choose as, choosing where you're going to live. But ultimately, it caused me to take up the subject of end of life. I really saw Oregon's Death with Dignity program as a fundamental pillar of this state's progressiveness. And I really wanted to live around people who treated death with dignity and reason. Now, all this talk and thought about end of life and terrible diseases got startlingly real when about 2 years at age 59, I got my own dementia diagnosis. Early onset, they called it. And it was likely to become full-blown Alzheimer's, they told me. Immediately, I began thinking about my end-of-life preferences. Things had to be different from Dad's experience. I knew I wasn't going to die like he did, without agency, without choice, without the capacity to love and feel loved. But what I didn't have at that point was a way to codify what I wanted and didn't want to tolerate as my disease progressed. Now, I'm going to sound a little bit like a hawking advertising guy here, which I'm not really typically, but the Compassion and Choices Toolkit gave me agency. It gave me a way to codify it. Now I have on paper for my loved ones, my son Jack, you're included in that. He's out there. And now I have on paper for my loved ones and the medical team to see how I want to live and what I don't want to endure at the later stages of this disease. This toolkit profoundly eased an important discussion between John and me. It enhanced our understanding about my end-of-life desires and made my preferences much, much easier to talk about. Now that they are written down, the things that I want to happen and I don't want to happen at the end of my life. Now that I have it on paper, how I want to live and excuse me, I'm starting in a different paragraph here. The toolkit profoundly eased an important discussion between John and me. Now that they're written down, I feel a sense of control for myself and for my family. It's time to meet with Jack and his brother and sister and their mother, with my completed copy of the toolkit as the only agenda item in that meeting. Before I lose my capacity to make decisions for myself, I can now face the practical questions that surround the rest of my life. For instance, I decided to let my driver's license expire in August because I'd seen how hard it was to get the driver's license out of my dad's hands. He was in no condition to drive. And we had a hell of a time getting him to see that. And he never really did. And it was a terrible, terrible scene. And I just didn't want my kids and my remarkably supporting husband to force me to do so, to give up that driver's license as my disease advanced. Because at that point, I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about what was going to happen to the other people that I was going to run into. So just this simple example that I decided to take, to let my driver's license expire, gave me great comfort. And that's just one small example of the type of considerations that the toolkit provides. Excuse me. Until I saw the toolkit, I was struggling with the when, the how, and the what of my own death. Compassion and Choices has put a practical, succinct, end-of-life considerations front and center with this new tool, and I'm now trying to be upfront with friends and family about the intentional life I want to lead from here on. I'm also upfront about the death I want and the death I don't want. I want to outsmart my disease and deny it the ability to erase my own personhood during my last lap. We as a culture have the opportunity to have a discussion about the thorny questions surrounding dementia and end-of-life planning. We can now begin with the toolkit potentially charting a different way with dementia-related life and death questions. Compassion and Choices is raising that narrative by putting the full strength of their institutional knowledge, and you heard Kim say it, and the institutional knowledge and experience behind this toolkit to improve the lives and deaths of those of us with dementia. This new toolkit is ultimately a document of mercy and compassion for people like me. I now have the choices that I didn't know that I had, like the ability to live until the last day of my life with a sense of grace and choice. Because for me, on my last day, I want to feel the love. Thank you.